Before I jump into this video, I just want to remind everyone that this video is part 2 of my bullying series. If you haven't watched part 1, don't worry, I'll sum up that video in just a second. However, I do recommend you watch part 1 so you can have a better understanding of the events that happen in this video. I've left the link for it in the description and in the information card, so feel free to just click on one of them whenever you want. With that out of the way, let's get started. So basically, Alpha and Beta were my so-called friends who treated me like garbage and always felt the need to remind me that I was beneath them, and this lasted from the 3rd grade all the way to the 6th. It wasn't until my neighbour Deku, who decided to play with us and see firsthand how I was being treated, that I was finally saved from Alpha and Beta as he physically pulled me away from them. The following months were pretty difficult. There were still a few months left before we graduated primary school and I was left friendless. I was still in Alpha and Beta's class, and during class and outside of class, they made it their mission to hang around somewhere where I could see them and show me how much fun they were having without me. Shouting things like, "We're having so much fun," and stuff like that. I tried to hang out with Deku for a while, but I soon realized that wouldn't work. I remember one day we were all sitting in a circle talking about, I don't know, whatever 12-year-olds used to talk about back then, probably like MSN or MySpace. As we were sitting there, I suddenly realized that I wasn't there. Sure, I was sitting there, I was listening to the conversation, I was laughing along, but I wasn't there. No one was looking at me. No one was talking to me. Whenever I hung out with Alpha and Beta, if I said something out of line or if I tried to join a conversation midway, they would usually belittle me and abuse me. So I think I was scared to actually talk to Deku's friends. I realized that if I got up and walked away, no one would even notice. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't want to feel like I was just following Deku around like a pest, so I stopped going to see him. I remember those last few months were horrible. Around July, my family and I were due to go overseas for a few weeks and stay with my mother's family. Just before we left, I had gotten into an accident and I was on crutches. The day before we left for overseas, my mother and I came to school in the morning to pick up my homework for the next few weeks from my teacher. The way the building was structured was that my class was on the 2nd floor, and so the whole class was up there, lining up outside the door, looking down on us because they were waiting for the teacher to open the door for them. As I walked into the building on my crutches, I looked up to my class who was looking down on us, waiting for the teacher. I remember smiling weakly and waving goodbye to them. Do you guys know how sometimes something happens in your past? Something that overflows you with so much emotion that the mental image is burned into your brain. You remember every detail, you remember all the feelings you felt at that moment, and no matter how hard you try to forget it, you never can. I waved up to say goodbye to my class, and no one waved back. It was then and there that I truly understood that I was alone. There was no one in this school who even cared that I existed. Sure, Deku was a nice guy, but he had his own friends, and I had convinced myself that he didn't have space for me. I was all alone. When I returned from overseas, I wasn't welcome back. Nobody said anything, and Alpha and Beta continued to bully me from afar. By the way, I forgot to mention that I was actually school captain for my school. Before you guys start saying, "How are you school captain? Isn't it a popularity contest? I thought you didn't have any friends." I totally agree. But none of the popular kids applied for the role, and because I was known in the school as the diligent nerd, I think that's why people voted for me. Not to mention that the teachers had a final say in who the captain was, and as I'm sure you guys would have probably guessed, teachers liked me because I was a good quiet student. Anyway, the day finally came for us to graduate primary school, and because I was the school captain, I had to perform a speech on stage in front of everyone. Because I was a very small boy, actually I think I was the smallest boy in the year level, I had to tiptoe up to the microphone to speak. Once the speech was done, we were given the opportunity to leave the hall for a few minutes and take photos with our family, and to say goodbye to them because the students had an after party in the same hall. I took photos outside with my family, and I remember my parents telling me how proud they were of me. Not only did I conduct the graduation speech, but I also won several awards and even a scholarship for high school. Seeing the look on my parents' face and the joy it gave me, absolutely no one in the entire world could take that away from me. This was my happy moment. It didn't last. Once I said goodbye to my family, I opened the door to go back into the hall. As I entered, I looked up to the stage. And there was a boy there, on his knees, kneeling up to the microphone, pretending to be me, mocking me in front of everyone in my year level. And everyone was laughing. And guys, being 100% honest here, at that point, I didn't care. No, to be more specific, I no longer cared. Primary school had been literal hell for me. I had endured so much. I think I stopped caring a long time ago. This was my graduation day. I was just hours away from getting out of this place forever. The kids at this school, they meant nothing to me. I was ready to reset my life, to start fresh at my new high school, away from all these people. If only it had been that easy. Unfortunately for me, our primary school was directly opposite from the local high school. Because it was so close and my brother was enrolled there, it was already decided that I had to go to that high school. I'm sure you guys can probably guess where the problem is. Because this school was so close to the primary school, practically every student who went to my primary school ended up transferring there. My chance to be reborn and to meet new people and start over? How could I have been so naive? And as you probably guessed it, Deku, Alpha, and Beta all transferred into my high school as well. But, as luck would have it, our school had an enrichment program. This meant that out of the 12 or so classes of Year 7 students, you were placed into a class based on your results from the tests we had to take before we enrolled. And me, being the teacher's pet, nerd, loser, know-it-all that I was placed into the enrichment class 7S. And so was Deku. There were also a few others from our school, but as you probably guessed, they were nerds and they weren't part of any group that used to bully me in primary school, so I was okay with it. The social standing of our school was formed almost instantly. The popular kids from our school became friends with the popular kids from the other schools who transferred to our school. And so Year 7 had a huge group of kids who used to sit in front of the locker bay and just chat. I would sometimes sit with them, but once again I felt pretty invisible, so I stopped going there. I remember almost every single day I used to walk around on my phone, texting myself or pretending to call people from other schools. I used to walk around the locker bays trying to look like I was busy and important and that I wasn't alone. I'm sure no one even noticed. Now, the reason why I mentioned our class and how it was an enrichment class is actually pretty important to the events that happened after. Our class 7S became pretty well known in the school as being the best class. That's not me just saying it, by the way, but in terms of academic and sporting results, well, we always came in first place. Our school had regular competitions almost weekly where they would pit not only the Year 7 classes together, but sometimes even the Year 8 and 9 classes. Science, math, cross-country, swimming, basketball, our class won practically every single event. Because we were an enrichment class, everyone in the class was a nerd who excelled in the academics, but we also had some very athletic kids in our class, including Deku and a few popular kids from the other schools, and that's why we were doing so well in the sporting competitions. Now, you're probably thinking, Sultan, enough with the boasting, what's the point of this little subplot? Well, because our class had developed this reputation, the class began to grow closer. We developed a sense of camaraderie and we were all proud to be in that class, including myself. We all wanted to be the best, and to keep our reputation, we pushed and supported each other to do our best. As I watched everyone around me open up, break out of their shells, talk to people they'd never spoken to before, I thought that the social hierarchy was crumbling, at least in our classroom. But as I continued to watch everyone, I realized the social hierarchy never existed. I watched my classmates grow into comrades because they were confident, friendly, and they actually made an effort to speak to people they'd never spoken to before. It was then that I realized the reason why I felt so invisible wasn't because of some social construct, it was because of myself. When I hung out with other people, I never spoke up. I never really made an effort to join into a conversation or to make myself known to others. I think I was still scared to open up because of how Alpha and Beta had treated me. I didn't want to be rejected. I didn't want to be laughed at. I didn't want to go through all that again. But if I never made an effort, I'd be stuck how I was. A timid pushover, scared of his own shadow, walking around at lunchtime by himself, floating through high school, not making a sound. I'd be the exact opposite of Deku. Deku, who was the pillar of our classroom, the person who brought out so many shy people and made our classroom into a safe haven for everyone in it. I wanted to be like Deku. No more timid Sultan. No more pushover, quiet loser who walked around by himself at lunchtime feeling sorry for himself. I was gonna show my classmates me. The real me, with no filter, no holding back, no being scared of the outcome. No more puppy dog Sultan who needed to be protected. I was going to be courageous, just like Deku. I was going to make friends. The kids that I sat with in that class, 7S, all these years later and I'm still friends with them. What Deku said stayed with me forever. I became a person who was nice to everyone, but I chose my close friends carefully. I stopped taking crap from toxic people and I decided to focus on the good people. I also became a lot more protective of my friends. I became the person who my friends would turn to for advice because I genuinely cared about their well-being. Sadly, Deku moved houses and transferred into another school in the 9th grade. We still saw each other at parties and sometimes we would hang out at the mall with friends, but we started to see each other less and less. Alpha and Beta stuck around for the entire time I was at high school. It didn't take long before Beta realized what a crappy friend Alpha was, and soon he left to find his own friend group. Almost instantly, Beta became a better person, and a few years later his friend group and mine kind of came together and we reconnected. In year 12 we had study period together and we would spend the whole period discussing Game of Thrones theories with everyone. It was obvious that back then Beta was only following Alpha when he used to torment me, and to be honest, I never blamed Beta for any of what had happened to begin with. I knew deep down he was a good person. We aren't exactly close, but I still see him at parties and gatherings, and he's still my friend to this day. Alpha also found his group. Sometimes I would bump into him at school or at parties and gatherings. Sometimes there would even be a little bit of small talk, but that was it. I was never rude or aggressive to Alpha, and I never confronted him about the past. I let it go, but I never forgot. I mean, what was the point of harboring a grudge for someone like that? That's beneath me. I guess the moral of the story is you don't have to be friends with someone just for the sake of feeling included. The world is so vast and there are so many opportunities to meet some incredibly awesome people. I mean, why waste your time on a toxic person or someone who treats you like garbage? It may be hard to sever ties and to be alone for a while, but I can assure you it's better in the long run. No relationship is better than a toxic relationship. This may seem weird, but I personally don't regret being bullied. I think that our experiences shape who we are, and because of how I was treated, I learned how to treat people the right way. I think because of all this, I became a person I can be proud of. If there's anything I regret about everything that's happened in this story, it's that to this day, I never thanked Deku properly. I honestly think he had a major part in shaping my personality and nature. Because of him, I'm someone who has so many amazing friends who I would do anything for. Deku, if for some reason you stumble upon this video, I just want to say thank you, friend. I hope you guys liked that little series. There's actually a lot more that happened in terms of bullying and in terms of how I grew into a social person, but I really enjoy making this kind of content in a way that it's not rushed, and I don't want to cram the little details in without explaining it completely. I just think it makes the story kind of dull if I do that. So the good news is you guys can expect to see more school videos like this in the future. If you're interested in that, be sure to subscribe. They will be very different than this because unlike primary school where I tried to avoid conflict as much as possible and I just kind of went with the flow, in high school I was the complete opposite. I always threw myself head first when it came to a friend in trouble, and I got into a lot of trouble. So look forward to that character development. Also, here's a little fun fact for you guys. If you've seen my sheep animation, you'll know that I had a neighbor who used to jump the fence and pet the sheep. That girl was actually Deku's older sister. So yeah. Also, I just want to point out that when I say don't waste your time on toxic people, I don't mean if there's a disagreement, cut out their friend straight away. That's not what I mean at all. I'm talking about a person's character. You know, if that person is constantly being selfish or arrogant or rude to you and it's more than a one-off thing, then, you know, why spend time with someone like that? I firmly believe that you start to act like the people who you surround yourself with, and you start to pick up on their like behavioral traits and stuff. So you should hang out with cool people who are good to their friends and aren't arrogant buttheads. Yeah. I've rambled enough today. Love you. Bye. Do you guys know how sometimes something happens in your past? Something that overflows you with so much emotion that the mental image is burned into your brain. You remember every detail. You remember all the feelings you felt at that moment, and no matter how hard you try to forget it, you never can.